Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started, everyone. Thanks for joining this breakout session starting off with West Red Lake Gold. I'm Jeff Clark, thegoldadvisor.com. This is a special announcement for me because I know Gwen very well. If you don't know, Gwen decided that she was going to go and do something else. I purchased her business, long story short. Peter Krauth came over as well, so we're excited about all that. But Gwen is now with West Red Lake Gold. So would you give Gwen Preston a warm welcome for her presentation on West Red Lake Gold?
Thanks very much, Jeff. Yeah, that all only went down 2.5 months ago, and Jeff and I are still ironing out all of the details that are involved in a business sale. But it's awesome to see my subscribers in his hands. And I'm excited about where I am. So like Jeff said, I spent 10 years writing a newsletter, helping people find opportunity by telling them what I was doing with my money in the junior metals and mining space. Over that span, I invested in everything from like very junior, pre-discovery, tiny little companies all the way through to major operators. And one of the big things that I came away with was the most reliable re-rate that happens in the mining sector is that re-rate from the construction decision to pouring gold. And it makes sense that it's a reliable one, right? Exploration is not reliable. We all know that. It's amazing when it happens, but production has its challenges as well. More reliable, but you know, it's got its risks. What's really reliable is getting re-rated because you go from spending money to making money. That's what that golden runway is about, and that's one of the key reasons that I was so excited to join West Red Lake. So I'll get into that in a minute. I'm already making forward-looking statements, and it takes 2 pages of disclaimers to describe the risks therein. Okay, so what's West Red Lake? We bought the Madsen mine, and we bought the Madsen mine. That was my president and CEO, Shane, is here in the middle of the room. He's built mines all over the world, and he got to know Frank Justra, and they started looking around for what they could buy. Frank was interested in doing that because Frank has been an incredibly successful investor deal creator in the mining space for a couple reasons. One is that he's really, really good at timing gold, and he had been out of gold for a long time and decided to come back in about 2 years ago. When he's doing gold, 2 of the characteristics of how he builds companies are he really likes assets that are either close to or in production, often if they're a bit distressed and there's a way of repairing the asset using expertise and capital, because he can bring those to an asset. And he also really loves aggressive growth. If you're going to be in a rising gold environment, he wants to provide investors with a stock that adds leverage by having aggressive growth in that rising gold environment. If they wanted to create that, then they needed to find a starting asset, and they found that perfect starting asset in the Madsen mine. Our land packages are in red here. The one in the upper left there is the original land package that this small junior company, West Red Lake Gold Mines, owned. Shane and Frank and the team around them went and approached that company, essentially took over that company and used it as the vehicle to bid on the Madsen mine, which is the other package there. And the Madsen mine has a history, no doubt about it. So this is the brief summary of that history. The Madsen mine first operated from the 30s to the 70s. That was a successful go. They pulled 2 million ounces of gold out of the ground in rock that averaged 9 grams per ton. They developed all the way down. They drove a shaft to 1,300 meters because they were good enough at exploring that they tagged into what we now know as the 8 zone, which is an incredibly rich ore body at depth. So they did a good job mining. And then, of course, gold just wasn't worth very much in 1972, and the mine had gotten big and costly in 1970s terms, and so that mine wound down. Then there was a period from the mid-90s to about 2014 when a company called Claude was in there. They were like moths to a flame for the 8 zone. They dewatered the whole mine in an effort to mine that 8 zone. Unfortunately, there just wasn't enough volume there. The mine plan couldn't handle the cost of dewatering if you were only going to go after the 8 zone, so that approach didn't work for the asset. They sold it to a company called Pure Gold, which may or may not be familiar. Hopefully it's not too familiar in a negative way to those in the audience personally. But Pure Gold, over a 7-year period, drilled, engineered, permitted, built, operated this mine, and unfortunately went bankrupt. Pure Gold was run by a group of people who had had some really good successes at the more junior end of the mining spectrum, making discoveries, getting the market excited about discoveries, and then selling them on to people who then engineered and built mines on those discoveries. The Pure Gold team approached Madsen with a similar concept. They were like, let's get the market excited about the opportunity to revitalize the Madsen mine. This is in Red Lake, really renowned high-grade gold district. This is right around the time of Great Bear making their discovery right in the same area. This is shortly after Evolution Mines came in and spent a whole bunch of money to buy the other mines in this area. It was a hot district. It was a very reasonable concept, and apparently there were a bunch of suitors at the table, but Pure Gold did too good of a job marketing it. The valuation of the company got way beyond reason to $1.2 billion, and justifiably, no suitor was interested in spending $1.2 billion to buy the mine, so then Pure Gold ended up having to build and operate the thing. The problem is that the management at Pure Gold hadn't done that before. Building all of the steps that are involved in defining gold in the ground, gaining confidence in it, engineering it, and then mining it, moving it, processing it. It is an incredibly complicated thing to do. And if you try to do it for the first time without experienced guidance, you're not likely to succeed. And that's really the short version of what happened. So I will go into more detail on why they failed, because that pertains to what we're doing now. But they did go bankrupt. The asset ended up in the hands of Sprott Resource Lending, who had provided the $150 million in debt to build the mine, and West Red Lake Gold was able to buy it from Sprott Resource Lending after Pure Gold had put $350 million into the project. We bought it for $6.5 million, a 1% NSR, and they ended up with a 20% stake in our company. So that's how we ended up owning the asset. What did we buy? Well, this is an overhead view of what we bought. What's just as important, but not visible, of course, is all of the underground development. But we bought 1.7 million ounces at 7.4 grams per ton. I'll show you a long section of that resource in a moment. We bought a mill that's really good. The mill worked very well during Pure Gold's days. I don't want to stomp all over Pure Gold. They did a bunch of things really well. The mill that they built is a beautiful piece of infrastructure. The tailings facility is well designed. The permitting was done perfectly. They had some good relations with communities, so they did a bunch of good things. They just tripped up on some things that are really important, and so unfortunately that meant that it didn't work. But we did get a lot of infrastructure and a huge amount of investment and time that they had done, and we got it certainly for pennies on the dollar. This is a picture of that mill. We really like this mill. This mill ran reliably for them. It's rated at 800 tons per day. It ran at 1,000 tons per day for them at no problem. The mill is not a challenge for us. 800 to 1,000 tons per day is a really great amount of ore to process when you're pulling it out of an underground mine like this. So, a lot of great infrastructure on the surface. So if they had all that great infrastructure, what went wrong? Well, really what went wrong is that the vision that they wanted to get purchased drove a desire to take on as little debt as possible and issue as few shares as possible. They wanted to keep Pure Gold as attractive as they could to any potential suitors, and suitors don't want more debt. So they were always working with a constrained amount of money, which is a tough starting point when you're building a mine. As soon as they went into construction, they stopped drilling. The problem is that this is Red Lake. Red Lake has really high-grade gold, but you have to drill the stink out of it to actually know where it is. I think this slide does a slightly, but both these slides sort of tell the same story. I think this slide does a little bit of a better job. So when they first started building the mine, their resource model was the blue shape. I know the colors, I'm going to try and make these colors darker next time, but the top left corner there, the blue shape that's just like a ribbon going across, that was their resource model. They soon realized that that wasn't a very good resource model. They did a resource update, and they ended up with the purple shape, which incorporated the folding in the rock. That is a good capture of the mineralization envelope. So the gold is within that purple shape, but the gold is not consistently through that purple shape. And if you don't drill enough, you don't know where it is within that shape. Pure Gold's approach was to mine the purple. But when you drill a lot, you realize that the gold is actually, go down to the bottom image there, where the red is. Those red shapes are the lenses of gold that fit within the mineralized envelope. So the red fits inside the purple. If you mine all of the purple, you're going to end up diluting your grade, right? You're going to put a whole bunch of unmineralized material, mix it with the mineralized material, and that's why pure gold ended up delivering 3.5 gram per ton material to the mill when they had expected to deliver 8 gram per ton material to the mill. They diluted themselves by not knowing where the lenses of mineralization were within the mineralization envelope. That is always going to be a risk in high-grade underground mining. The way to manage that risk is to, I'll say it again, drill the stink out of it. And that's what we've been doing, right? So we started drilling in October with one drill. A few months later, we added a second drill. We now have 2 drills turning underground 24 hours a day to make sure that we have high confidence in where the gold is within the resource envelope. So that's a really important part of what we're doing. While we're doing that infill drilling work, there's a lot of opportunity to grow the resource really close to defined tons. This is a picture of the resource. The purple is better than 10 grams per ton. The red is between 6 and 10 grams per ton. The yellow is between 3 and 6. This is a long section, so if you imagine there's like a whole bunch of veins that are running this way, and we're looking at it from here, and they're all sort of smashed together to make this long section. All the call-out drill results on this slide are not included in that resource estimate. There's some really nice numbers there, and they're not included because when you have a really high-grade, nuggety system, a resource estimator requires fairly tightly spaced drilling to include a particular drill hole in their resource model. If they have, a hit here, and they have a hit 25 meters away, they are not going to be willing to say that there's mineralization consistent between those 2 hits. So, 25 meters is not that far. It is in the context of high-grade underground veins, but it also isn't. So a lot of these hits are reasonable to attach, to pull into the resource if you can drill targeting those opportunities. So our infill drilling is developing confidence in exactly where the mineralization is so that we can mine it and deliver good grade to the mill, and we're gonna expand the resource while we're doing it. The next 2 slides show evidence of that in action. These are drill hits. The lines show that resource shape, that mineralized envelope, and our drill hits that you can see extending down there are pulling defined resource along that mineralized envelope as we better define that lens and extend it right beside access right there. The gray is a tunnel underground. We're also finding new stuff while we're down there. That's another nature of these high-grade vein systems, is that if you're down there and looking around, you're likely to find a bit more. So the black dashed lines are a new resource envelope zone that we've hit into while we were drilling the ones that are defined there. And so now we have multiple high-grade intercepts, over 100 meters of strike, like right in and around where we were going to be mining anyway, and where there's tunnels. So that's what the drilling is all about. The drilling is absolutely essential to our restart plan and having confidence in this mine. What else are we doing to have confidence in our ability to start this mine successfully? Well, the green line there is what we're calling the connection drift. One of the things that Pure Gold did, they originally planned on starting in the heart of the zone, which is in this, basically where it says Austin, and they were going to do that from the east portal. But to get down to where it says Austin was going to require a lot of development. So instead they started over at McVeigh. They used the west portal. That was a windy, steep, narrow portal, and they had to take ore out there across 2 public roads and past a town to get to the mill. There was lots of inefficiencies in that, including having to dump the ore on the ground and reload it, which is a cardinal sin in mining if you want to keep your costs down. So this is an example of the kind of investment that we're doing in the site so that our costs are better than they were with Pure Gold. We're doing a bunch of test mining so that we understand exactly which approaches to mining in detail work in the variety of underground environments at Madsen, near old stopes that are backfilled, that aren't backfilled, in areas that haven't been mined. We need to know the kind of mining that works. These are some of the other surface infrastructure investments that we're doing. We're building a camp so that we can efficiently and cost-effectively house the workers that we bring in. Red Lake is full of miners, thankfully. Most of the 120 people that we have on site right now live in Red Lake, but we are going to have to house some people, and a camp is the way to do that rather than trying to secure every hotel room in Red Lake at an exorbitant cost. Put that all together in sort of a waterfall chart, and this is what we're doing. Those are all of the efforts that are underway as we push to a mine restart. That mine restart is going to happen in the second half of next year, so 12 months from now, maybe a bit more. We're going to do a PFS. Because this mine is largely built, it's not happening in the normal sequential order where you do a PEA and then do some more resource and then do a PFS and then a feasibility study and then finance and then build. You know, the build actually happened first. Now we're doing the pre-feasibility study, and we're doing that to set the bar. The pre-feasibility study will say, we're going to produce this many ounces of gold at this cost. And when we start this mine up again, the most important thing for us to do is to meet that bar. Because there's a big elephant in this room. This mine failed in October of 2022. So we need to address that elephant by doing exactly what we say we're going to do, and the pre-feasibility study will define that. What's the point from an investment perspective of doing all of this? It's that thing that I started with, the re-rate that occurs when you go from building a mine to producing gold. And these are two ways of looking at that re-rate, how that re-rate works. The chart on the left just shows average price to net asset value for unfinanced mine builders who have got money in the bank to do the construction, junior producers. You get more multiple, you get more value in the market relative to the value of your asset when you start producing, instead of when you still need money to get there. The chart on the right shows the same thing in a slightly different way. Enterprise value relative to total mineral inventory, you get a much higher valuation for the ounces that you hold when you transition from being an explorer or developer to being a producer. That's why we're doing it from an investor's perspective. That's why to care about what we're doing. I won't be able to go through all the rest of the slides here because this is a shorter presentation. The other reason to put this mine into operation is because of the potential for it to be more. These Red Lake systems go deep. There's lots of examples, like the right side of this shows the Red Lake Mine Complex, which is just 30 kilometers along trend from us and has been in operation for decades. It goes way deeper than we go. Our resource is only the gold over there. The red is the potential for it to go deeper. The 8 zone, I'll get to in a minute, it's tantalizing. Here are some of the deep hits down plunge of our resource that underline that potential to find more at depth. And you can't really explore for that until you're down there working. You can't do it efficiently or cost effectively from surface, it's too deep. But once you're down in the heart of the system, you're making money, then you can explore at depth and see what's down there. This is another just, if there's geophysicists out here, they'll see that this is a good indication that the structure that holds this system really continues to depth with confidence, helps that theory along. And I'm rushing a bit because I want to get to this 8 zone. The 8 zone is what Claude, that one company back in the late 90s, broke their pick on, right? And they broke their pick on it because they had a resource down there that was a 25 gram per ton resource. Our resource is 7.5. We've been very conservative in our remodel, and our resource down there is about 100,000 ounces at 18 grams. 18 is still a lot higher than 7.5, so you can see why we're interested in getting down to that zone. And the shaft goes all the way there. So we are soon going to develop a little bit over to the right, sort of from the bottom of that main ramp over to underneath where it says east, so that we can drill down and test the extension of the 8 zone to see if we can, grow that to a few 100,000 ounces. It becomes pretty worth spending $10 million to rehabilitate the shaft so that we can pull 100, 200 tons per day out of that zone and replace 7 gram per ton material going to the mill with 18 or 20 gram per ton material going to the mill. That's the kind of transformative effect that a zone like this can have on a mine like Madsen. I'm going to wrap up, just 2 more slides. The reason that we're able to do this is because of the people who are doing it. That starts with Shane Williams, who has built mines all over the world. Shane was the COO of El Dorado. He built mines in Turkey. He built mines in Greece. He built the Lamaque mine in Quebec with El Dorado. He'd built mines prior to that with the Lundin Group, with Rio Tinto. He's done this many times, and that's really important because this is a complicated process, and it takes experience to manage that complicated process well. Because he's done this before, he attracted a really stellar crew of people to do this with him. So, from our CFO to our VP of Exploration, our Corp Dev person, they're all really good. They've all done this before. And that makes us quite unusual, having a team with that kind of experience. This is our cap structure, 270 million shares out, almost 400 million fully diluted. We do have $44 million in the bank right now. We will need to access a little bit more capital to have a cushion into sustainable cash flow once we do this restart. But we're turning this mine on in the second half of next year. And I don't think there's another company. If you can think of one, let us know, because Shane and I haven't been able to come up with one. Another company turning on a gold mine in North America next year. So if you like that re-rate from construction to production, that's what we offer. And I know that I need to finish with this slide, or else people will complain because they need to see the treasure hunt QR code. Thank you so much. I know we need to clear out of here in not too long. Can I take it? Okay, I'll take any questions if there are, and then Shane and I can linger outside as well and answer any more. Don't be shy.
How tightly are you going to start the drill? You said resource you have to do it. What's the number?
So he's asking, how tightly do you have to drill, how tightly do we plan to drill this resource to have confidence in it? I mean, 6-meter spacings. So, what's that?
I'm just 6 feet away, just like
But yeah, I mean, when you look at that long section and the number of holes that have Swiss cheesed this thing, it seems like there's already a lot of drilling, but it takes so much drilling to know where the gold is. But when the resource has this kind of grade, it's worth it, right? People say, oh, underground mining, that's risky. Sure, open pit mining is risky too, and the grade with open pit mining is usually, or the risk with open pit mining is usually grade. The risk with underground mining is that you have to drill the stink out of it to know where the gold is, but the grade can bear that cost. I think I'm gonna have to wrap it up. I'm seeing a face at the back who is smiling now, but won't smile if I keep talking. Thank you so much for your time and attention. Shane and I will be just outside the door if you have any questions.